I am Jennifer Wilson, keeper of this space, Sisters Uptown Bookstore and Cultural Center. I'd like to welcome all of you here today on this wonderful, wonderful occasion. I met Melissa via the telephone. We've been conversing back and forth from North Carolina, and so now she is my best friend in the whole wide world. we had to get it straight. She said, I'm doing this work as a result of a presentation that my dad did, and I want to honor him with this work, and I'd like to do the presentation in your bookstore. So we now are embarking on our 19th year, and it's all from grace. I am clear. The Creator assigned me this mission, and it's been an interesting journey. And at this point, I am the only black female owned bookstore in the whole borough of Manhattan. So I know that if it were not for God's grace, this would not exist. And so I'm grateful for your presence, and I'm grateful for the connection with Melissa and her mom. My daughter Corey also conversed with Melissa on a regular. She's the lady over there preparing the food. And so we're grateful and we're honored that you're here and that Melissa chose this space to do her presentation of her dad's work. I know he's smiling down on her right now, and so we're happy that she took the time to take the torch and prepare his work. And so Melissa now is going to come in her own way and present the work of her father. Melissa Dixon.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello to everyone that is actually live streaming as well on Facebook that was able to be part of this wonderful event as well. Thank you again, Sister Jennifer and Uptown Bookstore for allowing this event to take place. Again, I am the daughter of the late Harold Stenbar. He was a phenomenal writer, and in honor of him, I am going to start and be able to give you a full understanding on what made me come in to create this book in his honor, and how it can inspire you going forward on your day-to-day. So again, thank you again for celebrating this great book release, The Voice Never Heard. It has been a journey, but we are finally here. It is great to see so many familiar faces. I know my dad would be beaming from ear to ear. So some of you knew this great author, Harold Stenbar. For those that did not to meet him, I'm going to tell you in a few words about him. He was a historian. He was a man that knew and loved history. There was never a time he was not engaged in a conversation about history or various cultures or ethnicities. He was truly a teacher. He was always had you captivated when it came to knowledge, his knowledge, and what he carried inside him. He was his own encyclopedia. Even if he didn't have all the information at the time, his words were truly convincing. You were so captivated by the information that he provided you. He was a community activist. He enjoyed gardening, plays, model trains, old-fashioned classical cars. He loved museums. And he was a great supporter to anyone that he came across. He organized and arranged Black history programs for his local church and other churches in the community, not just in Manhattan and Harlem, but also in other 5 boroughs as well. He was a husband, a father, a grandfather, a father-in-law, an uncle, and a friend. So now that you have an idea who this man is, let me explain how I decided to publish a book in my father's honor. It all started after he passed in July 2018. I sat at his favorite working desk, and there it laid, a binder full of poems. I started to read his poetry, and I was taken back. Now you may say, haven't you read his poems before? Hasn't he read them to you? Well, yes, but I'm his daughter. I would listen to my dad, and I would say, nice poems, Dad. But truth be told, I heard him reading them to me, but I really wasn't listening. Now, some of you here can agree with me as well that knew my dad. We may have heard my dad read poetry over the years at various events or church programs, but were you really listening to the words that he was saying? My dad expressed to me at times, people just don't get me. They are not listening to what I'm trying to say. Yes, my dad was very unique in his own way, but he fought for what he believed in. He was a man that saw things in such a bigger light. Even in his poetry, his words are full of power, strength, endurance, hope, peace, justice, love, courage, faith, and forgiveness. We all can agree it is hard to see this in this world today. I knew it was time to finally allow these words to be expressed in this world today. It is time to finally allow these words in this world to hear, but really and truthfully listen. It is time for his words to reign from city to city. It is time for his poetry to finally be heard. So allow these poems to uplift you and provide a broader perspective in life. Yes, we are all in different levels in our life. Spiritually, physically, and emotionally. But the voice never heard will give you simplicity. I have mentioned this before, and it is time to live out Harold Stembar's legacy and take the torch and touch lives like he did. You have the opportunity to take that torch, which is this book, and share his words with others. I know that it was God's will for this binder to be left for me. God knew I would be the one to complete my dad's dream, allowing his voice to finally be heard. Now, let me make it clear, I had no clue on how to publish a book, but God guided me all the way through. Remember, I had a binder full of over 100 poems that I had to read, sort, and arrange. I had to create this book from scratch. Creating and designing this book was a challenge, but through God's grace, he allowed me to see all of this through. There were so many pieces in putting this book together, but I was determined to bring my father's words to the forefront. As you read this book, The Voice Never Heard, allow your mind to be transformed in a positive and uplifting light. Thank you. Read a few poems from The Voice Never Heard. I would like to first say thank you to a few individuals that really have allowed this day to happen, and individuals that really have guided me along the way. First, I would like to thank Sisters Uptown Bookstore for hosting this wonderful event. Thank you for Tiffy Jack Productions for live streaming and recording this event. I would also like to thank my cousin Trisha for working behind the scenes with Tiffy Jack Productions and allowing this day to happen as well. I would like to thank Akita Pearson, who was very knowledgeable in helping me with this process. I'd like to thank my mother for taking over 20 plus phone calls a day to listen to me about my issues and my concerns in putting this book together. Thank you to Mima and Stephanie for being a great listener and a great supporter throughout these last couple of months. Thank you TJ, Ryan, Prince, Kiki, Corey, and Indy for your unconditional love. Thank you to my husband Terry for being so supportive over these last months. I know he is thankful that I will not be going to sleep now 2, 3, 4 in the morning with my laptop open, editing and making changes to prepare this book for printing. So I thank you, Terry, for all of your support and all of your love that you have helped me through to get this day to happen. Finally, I would like to thank everyone that is currently watching online, that is able to support me on this day, and everyone that was able to come and support me physically here, and that I'm able to hug and see so many great familiar faces and faces that I haven't seen in a very long time. Thank you so much for your support. Please always remember that this book is going to be also not just available in Sisters Uptown Bookstore, but it will also be available on Amazon.com. So at this time, before I read the poems, I'm going to read 2 poems in here. After I finish reading these poems, we can open the floor for any questions that you may have after I read these 2 poems. This poem I'm going to read is from chapter 1, and the name of the poem is called Still Knocking. Why are you still knocking at that door? You say for communication, for information, for education, for recreation, for celebration, for validation, for inspiration, for. But you do hear me? Why are you still knocking at this man's door? He's not answered before, and the best of communication has never been so poor. But you say, I need some information, plus education, not to mention recreation, in order for my celebration to embrace my validation. And surely my inspiration will move him to give me accommodation. Knock if you will, but he will not be answering. The door, you say, why? Because you're knocking at a dead man's door, and you want to live in a dead man's house and sit at a dead man's table, eating a dead man's food, drinking a dead man's drink, sleeping with a dead man's wife, raising a dead man's children, running a dead man's business, yes, keeping a dead man's world alive, all because you fear to embrace the beautiful world that God has placed within you. Look, the answer is within you. So stop knocking at the dead man's door. The second poem I would like to read, it is from chapter 4. And the title of chapter 4, I named it The Poet's Prayer. And the name of this poem is going to be called I Did Not Ask to Be. I did not ask to be. I did not ask to be who I am. I did not ask to be black or white. I did not ask to be male or female. Nor did I ask to be born through this family or that one. I had no say in that matter. But now that I am, who and what should I be to me? Let me end by saying, if I am who I am, why should I be another? So does anyone at this present time, I'm opening up the floor to any questions? Yes, Connie.
It had plagued my mind before the date arrived. How did you come up with the title, Melissa?
Because I knew my father always said he used to read poetry to a lot of individuals, but he always said, I don't think people really understand me. And I don't think people are really listening to the words that I'm trying to say to them. He wanted to touch lives in so many different ways, through his words, through just inspiration, just being just a community activist to so many people. And he used his words a lot of times for his platform, but a lot of times people didn't understand him or receive what he was trying to say to them. So that's why I named the book The Voice Never Heard, because truth be told, people really didn't understand or hear him at the time.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for that breakdown, because when he spoke to me, I heard him. And I thank him. So I didn't understand, but I got it.
And actually, the subtitle is, do you hear me? Are you listening? Is because a lot of times he would always say, do you hear me? Are you listening?
Yes.
So I wanted to make sure I incorporated a lot of his own personal words that he would say to people on a day-to-day basis.
Understood. Thank you.
Any other questions?
What was his inspiration for his poetry?
I personally believe it was his day-to-day life. I think it was what he experienced. I think it was his job that he worked in was in rehabilitation, and he was involved with so many different individuals, dealing with helping people get back on their feet that were addicted to drugs, alcohols, and he not just tried to be the counselor, but he also tried to be the spiritual reader and leader for people, to kind of just say, this is not the end for you. There's more out there for you. There's something greater. There's something better. And actually, since you said that, I'll read you a poem that he had it's in chapter 1. And because he was a rehabilitation counselor, there's a poem that he wrote that says, the title of the poem says, they came to the window. They came to the window with their brokenness, pregnant with scent of self-loathing, the flower of their innocence, lost forever, robbed, beaten, and raped. As if stolen in the night, killed in noon daylight, stripped of everything that was tight. They came to your window with their abusive language, harsh words on the tip of their tongues, ready to cut like a razor. Their childhood nurtured in violence and disrespected. They came with memories of homelessness, helplessness, and emptiness. These once flawless children of God came to your window wanting but a moment free of the nightmare of their creation. A nightmare that would not go away, playing a permanent role in their lives. The Holocaust of their incarceration to drugs, poverty, and crime. They came to your window with a silence so loud, crying, I am broken. Can you fix me? Tired, weary, exhausted, beaten down, hurting on every side. How do you fix a broken people? How do you put the pieces back together again when the spirit has been shattered? So he goes by his experience. That's basically, he lived by what he saw, and he just put it in his own words. And he tried to read a lot of these poems to his patients or just anyone that he came across that was, because this is not just for what he dealt with every day. This is what he saw even just throughout his day-to-day experience. So he took these poems and said, even though this is just for what I see currently in my job, there are also other people out there that need to hear this as well. Yes?
Thank you. This is beautiful. I have, I guess, a two-pronged question. While you were putting the book together, I know you shared with us that it was a challenge. I'm sure it was emotionally, I'm sure it was an emotional process. While putting it together, did you hear your father? Was there anything, what he stood for? Did you hear a message that resonated with yourself while putting this together? And if so, and if it's personal, you don't have to share, what do you think he would want for you to carry out verbally?
Actually, I had sleepless nights, and it was God pushing me and putting words together. And I think God spoke to me personally, saying things that I knew within my dad that he finally wanted people to hear. Mm-hmm. So I would sometimes be sleeping, and I would get up 1, 2 o'clock in the morning and just write something down. Mm-hmm. And then I would call my mom and say, Mom, this is what I'm going to write. She's like, okay. So I think God resonated in my heart, in my mind, and he kept wrestling with me until I put it in this book. Mm-hmm. I really emphasize everyone to read the foreword, because the foreword really puts a foundation in who he really is as a person and who he really was as a person, to help and guide you through the poetry that he wrote. A lot of people oversight the foreword. A lot of people just go straight to the chapter 1. But I made sure that this book had a foundation. And since he's not here to verbally express it, I had to go into the history of his interaction with people and how he blessed individuals along the way. I'll just tell you, there was one individual here in the foreword. She was a member of his church, and she expressed that he was a father figure to her throughout her childhood, her early adulthood, and young adult life. Dr. Lafayette met my father in growing up in the church. He encouraged her to dream big and reach for the stars. Growing up, she always knew that she wanted to be a gynecologist, an obstetrician. During her quest to become a physician, my father always inquired about her journey. He would call her and write her, as well as, and she received unexpected letters or cards from my father filled of encouraging words, which I had no clue he was doing. And so these are just little emphasis of what my dad did. He made sure he put a footprint in everyone's life in some way, in some form. And he just wanted to just make sure the foundation of what he left behind, people would finally be able to understand and know who he really was as a person, and hoping that with his words, people going forward be able to share what he taught them. They can move forward and teach others as well.
Are you familiar with most of those poems, and how did you select the ones for the book?
I was familiar to some of them, but like I expressed, I heard my dad reading them, but a lot of times I would say, okay, Dad, but I think, unfortunately, when you have that time to reflect and people are coming to you and letting you and you're hearing what he actually did for people, allowed me to finally read these poems in depth and really say, okay, what would he want people to hear? Because he wrote over 100 poems, and there's not 100 poems in here, but honestly, God told me these are the ones that people need to hear right now. Now, I might do a volume 2,
Yes.
but that's a big but. Because I think this is going to take a long time to just navigate and just hold on. It's just going to carry on for a long time. This is not a book that you read and put it down. This is poems in here that's going to help you and carry you every day throughout your life. This is going to help you. I had someone call me that ordered a book already, and she said, I have it over my bed, and I read it, and where God leads me, that's the one I'm going to read. And that's how his poems were. You just can't read just one. You have to constantly go back and read his poems, because you're going to, every time you read it, you're going to capture something different. It's not going to be the same thing every time you read his poems. There's one poem that a lot of individuals do love, and I'll read this one. It's actually in chapter 6. It's called Celebration, and it's called Father's Day. Mothers in Zion, sisters in Christ, women in holy wedlock, king's daughters and daughters of Jacob. You flower the earth with your flawless beauty. We men could not celebrate this day without including you. We gather together to celebrate this Father's Day, but you are the crowning jewel of our celebration, for it is with you in mind that we pause to thank you this moment for your nurturing, for your steadfastness, and your loyal devotion to God and family. As Christ at wedding feast turned water into wine, and those who took were amazed that the best was saved for last. So it was on creation week that God created man first, but again he saved the best for last in the creation of you. Therefore, you who bring all human life into being, both carrying and rise to a gentle state and let fly away, we thank you, because there could not be Father's Day without you.
Yeah. Melissa, I must say, I'm very proud of you. I watched you as a child growing up with my kids, and I never know you had this in you.
Neither did I.
So I'm very proud because I know your dad would have liked you to do something like this. And I was surprised when your mom told me that you started on the book. I said, what? She started on the book? I said, I'm happy because I'm proud that she didn't wait any longer. And your dad, as you know, traveled with the Carlisle Donovan Scholarship Committee group. And he was always the one spearheading different things and would look at the committee on what we're doing and said, no, we shouldn't do this or we should do this. And he always had a poem written for the scholarship. And we were really proud of him unto today. Although he is gone, we still wish we had him back here. But I think that's being selfish.
Yes. I think, honestly, this was God's will.
guess
I
so.
believe that this was his time, and I think it's God's will now to allow his voice to reign in a different way.
Right.
And I think, unfortunately, sometimes people have to pass on to allow their voice to be finally heard.
Yeah, it's true.
So I think this is just a piece, and this is just going to continue to flourish because, like I said, this book is going to really help and impact individuals that need to finally hear words like this. In our world today, we don't hear things like this anymore.
No.
We're always on a hustle and bustle, and we're dealing with so much, or we're seeing a lot of negative that's going on, and we hear a lot of negative activity that's taking place in our world. But like I said, this book will give you simplicity. It will give you some clarity and some guidance and some peace. And I think that's what he wanted for everyone.
Did your father ever express an intent to publish his work?
Well, he actually, when I was going through his all of his binder and papers, there was a piece of paper in there that said how to publish. But speaking to some of his friends and individuals that when I finally told him what I was going to do, they said he talked about it. He said he always wanted to do it, but I think he was so just he didn't know where to begin. And I think he wanted to start. He actually had some even typed out, and it was in the binder, and they were all categorized by year, because it started from 1961 up until current. So I had to go through year to year trying to figure out what poem to put in here and try to really figure out what really emphasis what he would really want to hear, like I have indicated, and kind of just figure out, okay, why didn't he want to do it? Why didn't he complete the project? Why didn't he, because he actually one time did come to me and say, Melissa, can you mail this poem and mail it back? I think that's what it means when you copyright it, you know, but I said to him, I said, I think there's more work to that, Dad. And I never kind of, because, you know, me and his daughter, I kind of said, okay, Dad, yeah, but I really didn't really know the seriousness of his writings. And I started really reading it, and I said, wow, this man is really deep. So that's really, I think he wanted to, but he just, and then dealing with illnesses and different things, I don't think he was able to finally get it off the ground the really way he wanted to.
So you say some of the poems go back to 1961. Were there some that went back even further than that time frame?
As of right now, I think when I looked at it, goes all the way to 61.
Okay, and as you were going through those from 1961 up into the time that he passed away, in his writings and his poetry, could you feel or visualize the state of the world at the time? That, you know, like when Marvin Gaye was singing his songs, he expressed what was going on sociologically in society. Did you find that in your father's poetry? Yes, I did. I think that Still Knocking, that first poem, I think really resonates really what was going on at that time. Some of them are dated, some of them are not dated. So they could have gone to either maybe prior to 1961, but the ones that I did see dated, it started at 1961, and then it kind of gradually went from there. And I have, like I said, a binder full of them that he has written out, that he wrote a lot of them out, and then he titled some of them, and then he changed the title, then he pulled something into something else, but I think it was what he was dealing with at that time. So I kind of just wanted to see, okay, there's certain ones. He wrote one dedicated to my mother, you know, before they got married or when they got engaged, and it's in here. It's called Beauty Beneath the Snow. So I definitely wanted to make sure I emphasize and put that poem in there, because I know that's probably what he would want everyone to know, how he felt about his wife. So, yes.
Given the poems go back to 1961, could you see a change in how he saw the world over time through his writings?
Yes, they got more deeper. They got more intense. You can see that he was really trying to really express and trying to say, listen, do you get it? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? But I think that was his only way to have his outlet, is by putting it in words. Because he would be on the phone with different friends, and they would be conversating back and forth, and he had a men's group that they used to go to the diner
every Friday. Is that Mr.
That is correct.
Okay, so they would have their men's group and they would just talk. And I feel even after that men's group, he would go back and probably write things down then, because it was based off the conversations that he was hearing from people, what they were expressing, what they were dealing with at the time. And he just put it all in writing to really make sure that people maybe would understand or understand him of what was going on at that time. Any other questions?
I don't have to.
We have a time frame.
Oh, we have a time frame, okay.
I'll keep it very short. I'll try to. I was part of that men's group. I used to call it the gathering of the geezers. I used to call myself, I was a practicing heathen, because this way it was less complicated for me to deal with folks around me. But he was always very spiritual. He would always bring it back to scriptures. Anything that we would be discussing, he would always he would find a way to bring it back to that level. And you touched on something that really touched me very deeply. Sometimes we are too close to people to see who they are, and it just seems like what you said about other volumes. I thought in terms of the Bible, how those stories or how things are written and how they develop, and how people really never do die, because this is living. What we're doing right now is living, and he is living through what you are doing and what you are presenting to us.
Yeah.
And it's really very. This is really very exciting for me, because I'm a guy of the 60s too. We used to have conversations. I'm not going to take too much time because I can run, but I just want to thank you and thank the sisters for pulling this together for us as his apostles, so that we can listen to his words and kind of maybe feed off of what he has left us to really hear.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Again, I want to thank everyone for coming out and being part of this wonderful book release. This book is not going to just stop in New York. It's going all over the world. I am going to be sending this book out to many people, to touch lives. I'm actually sending this out to quite a few top political, so just anybody that needs to be touched. Because I think what we're dealing with, they need to hear it. Even if they just read one poem, I want to spread the word out to people, because I know that's what my dad would want me to do. So this is not going to stop here. You're going to see a lot of me. You're going to hear a lot of this book, because I know this is what he would want me to do in his honor. So I thank you very much for everyone to come out and celebrate this book release. There are some hors d'oeuvres and appetizers there. The book is actually being sold at the register, as well as anyone that is currently live streaming. You can order the book on Amazon.com, or if you're in the local area of New York, you can come to the bookstore, Sisters Uptown Bookstore in New York, and the books will be available here as well. So thank you everyone for coming, and I appreciate your time and your listening ears. Thank you.